So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the development of the cerebral cortex and looking at how the folds take place within the cortical layer. So the first thing we have to remember is that the cerebral cortex is a gelatinous matrix of neurons and support cells, glial cells, that are going to fold around each other based off of the cells being used or not used, leading to that change in density that we talked about before. The pattern that we see is all about those neurons needing to stay in contact with each other to keep the synapses around. So if we look at the images here from Zhu and from Hingentag, we notice that there's a distinct change that takes place within the folding. Now, I've placed onto Canvas two articles that relate to these folding issues in terms of how we go about seeing those folds. But what we have to remember is that the neurons themselves are going to stay in contact with each other. As the neurons become denser around each other, as they get used more, the dense material will sink, the lighter material will rise. But what ends up happening is that the dendrites and the axons have to stay in contact with each other. In order to stay in contact with each other, what ends up happening is that we get what's referred to as the axonal tension lines that you see in the image from Zhu, where you see the lines being developed. What those lines are doing is making sure that the axons within each of the cortical regions are able to project out through the cortex and then down into the spinal cord. If you look at the Hingentag image, what you're seeing there is you're seeing how in a three-dimensional space, what Zhu is showing in a two-dimensional space is able to arrange themselves. The end result of all of this is that we get the cerebral cortex folding around itself and being held in place by what's referred to as the axonal tension lines, the orange and the green lines that you see in the Hingentag image. The folding that we see in the image and the folding that we'll see within the cerebral cortex, either through the visual body or hopefully at some point in time back on campus looking at the cerebral cortexes from the cadavers, your cerebral cortex doesn't actually look like that cerebral cortex. Your cerebral cortex is constantly pulsating and changing its relative shapes around itself based off of use and disuse, where the more use we get, the bigger the gyres, the bulges within the cerebral cortex, and the steeper the sulcus, the invaginations that we see within the cerebral cortex. Until we fix the brain, it doesn't really look like what we think about either in a model image or in the cadaver image or in the medical show image that we see. So what I've linked onto Canvas is a video of the development of the fetal brain, and this is going to show you the axonal projections as well as the development of the new neurons along the radial projections that I talked about previously. What you need to do is go ahead and get out, when this video ends, go ahead and look at that video before you move on to the next video within the narrated presentations.